So that's clean tech as a vehicle for energy security then?
Well, both.
Why do you think that's so important to the U.S.?
Well, it's important because, first of all, energy security has always been important in national affairs.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a secure source of energy, you're at risk, tremendous risk, of having a declining economy. That's why China is trying to make as many deals around the world as it can to have secure sources of energy. Even though it's a vast country with a lot of resources of its own, that's why India is doing the same thing. They realize that in order to take people out of poverty, in their particular case, with more people in poverty than out, even though they've advanced a lot, they're going to need secure sources of energy, or that's not going to happen. The same thing is true for us. For us to maintain our position in the world, mm-hmm. and to keep up the quality of life that we have, we need a secure source of energy. And you look at the way countries have used energy as a way of blackmailing other countries, you realize how powerful this all is. Russia cutting off energy supplies to Eastern and Western Europe as a way of intimidating the Ukraine, or trying to discipline Belarus. Similar kinds of things happening in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can wish it away, but the reality is that you need energy to function in the world, and if somebody withholds that, it has catastrophic consequences. So the more you can be in control of your own destiny, the more powerful you are, and the more secure you are.
How do green buildings fit into this?
Well, green buildings fit in very well. I mean, reducing the use of energy, restraining it, is as strong a clean tech process as solar power. The less power you need, the more reasonable the demands for power, the easier it is to accomplish all of this. So a green building is a great advance, particularly if that becomes a model for its being used extensively, as a way of developing buildings here or around the country. There's no single way to solve the climate change issues and the national security issues involved in energy. A lot of people like to say there is no magic bullet.
Right.
It's probably a poor analogy, but it sort of gets the point across. And for years, I think that people thought there was. And what tends to happen, this is only human, is people involved in a certain technology tend to think that theirs is the answer to it. It's like doctors who think their methods of treatment is the way to cure the disease. Surgeons believe that operating is the way to do it, and other physicians think medication is the way to do it. Well, people who are involved in solar think solar is the way to do it, and people involved in hybrids think hybrid vehicles are going to answer the whole thing. People involved in nuclear power think nuclear power is going to answer the whole thing. And the reality is that unless something changes scientifically, there's no one method that's going to answer this, and conservation, can reduce the problem by 10 or 15, maybe 20%, never 100. But no one of these things can get you to 100%. But if you get enough 10 or 15%, mm-hmm. you solve the problem. And that's the way we have to look at it. It's a more complicated way of looking at it. And that's why there needs to be a lot of research and development. Mm-hmm. Right now, about $5 billion is spent by the government on research and development. That's a small fraction of what we spend on defense. It's a small fraction of what the pharmaceutical companies spend on medicines.
Research and development in general?
I think Pfizer alone spends $5 billion
mm-hmm.
on research. As one company
mm-hmm.
spends what the United States is spending on research and development.
For research and development for what?
For clean tech.
Okay.
So that isn't enough money
mm-hmm.
to get the kind of advance that you have to get as quickly as we have to get it.
How much money is enough money?
2 or 3 times that.
Yeah.
And that's all it would be really originally, because you can't absorb you could say, oh, we should spend $30 billion. Well, if you're spending $5 billion, you can't spend $30 billion because you don't have enough. You can't go from 5 to 30 realistically and in a useful way. But you can go from 5 to 7 or 8, and then maybe to 10. And to find processes that work and that work better than others is a trial and error situation.
But people, I mean, there's so much competition for money nowadays, and there's a recession, and there's wars. So why should we be spending this money on clean tech? Where's the benefit?
Could be a great new industry.
Okay.
And there aren't many great new industries. We have to think about, America, what's going to produce jobs and money and wealth for America. And it probably isn't going to be basic manufacturing, because that can be done less expensively and to some extent more efficiently elsewhere. Doesn't mean we can't do some manufacturing, but we're not going to be alone in dominating that space any longer. But this is an area in which we can.
Why?
Because we already have a tremendous amount of expertise. We already have a tremendous amount of scientific knowledge. Some of these are areas in which we invented the process. Even the ones that we haven't, where we've got a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience. We have an enormously well-educated base of people to work on this. We have great universities, great research centers. I don't know that anyone can compete with us in that area. So this is a thing that we could, if not own, dominate, and it would be a great thing to do for the world. If we can find a solution to how you store wind or solar power, it becomes a solution not just for the United States, but for China, for India, for Africa, for Europe. They're all wrestling with the same problem. In fact, some of them, the problem is worse. The problem is clearly worse in China and in India than it is here in the United States. And the solutions that we need are the solutions that they're going to need. And it wouldn't be bad if we had them buy them from us. That's the way trade works.
How much time is it going to take?
Well, it's going to take, you mean to really develop all this? Probably a couple of decades.
But we should start now.
We should start, well, we have started. We shouldn't say we haven't started. There are a lot of useful things that have been accomplished. We just aren't jump-starting it enough. We're not putting enough support behind it.
Why do you think?
And it's a much better thing to do, as we discuss cap and trade. The real objection to cap and trade is that you're going to put a cap, and even if you extend it over a period of time, the technologies don't exist right now to meet that cap. So then it becomes a tax. So whatever your position on cap and trade, for it or against it, the best thing for us to do is to develop the technologies that do offer the alternatives. That's after all what cap and trade is trying to do. Cap and trade is trying to develop industries, but it's doing it by suppressing other industries and taking more money for the government. A better way to do that is just to directly develop those industries, just to directly develop the technologies that are going to be necessary so that you reduce the emissions of carbon or eventually eliminate them if that's possible.
And is it the federal government's responsibility to fund it more?
No, yes, it is the federal government's responsibility to put in more funding. It isn't the federal government's responsibility to find the answer. The federal government will not find the answer. The federal government has found very few answers ever. All the things that have been discovered in the private sector. But the federal government could create sort of a magnet for attracting money by putting some more money into it.